During my sophomore year, I had a single dorm room tucked away in the corner of the floor. It was secluded, almost hidden, requiring a turn around a corner to even see the door. I liked it. It gave me the best of both worlds. Privacy when I needed it and the ability to invite friends over whenever I wanted. A few weeks into the semester, while studying for a bio exam, I heard a faint tapping on my door. It was so light, I almost didn't notice it. Thinking someone was stopping by, I called out, "Come in," but the door never opened. Curious, I got up and checked, but no one was there. Stepping into the hallway, I glanced around the corner. Nothing. Shrugging it off as a prank, I went back to my room and left the door slightly open. No one came back that night. The next evening, just after turning off my bedside lamp, the knocking returned, this time louder, more forceful. "Who is it?" I called out. Silence. I threw off my blanket and rushed to the door, yanking it open. The hallway was empty. Once again, I hurried to the corner to look down the main corridor. Not a soul in sight. The next morning, I asked a few people in the dorm if they had been messing with me. Everyone denied it. Then, on the third night, I woke up to the loudest knocking yet. It was relentless, pounding against my door. My heart pounded in my chest. This time, I hesitated. Should I open it? Summoning my courage, I threw the door open, empty as expected. But then, from the corner of my eye, I saw a movement. A figure disappearing around the far end of the hallway. Without thinking, I bolted after them. My bare feet slapped against the cold floor as I turned the corner. The only door ahead was the communal bathroom. Just as I reached it, I heard the sound of it shutting. I hesitated for a split second before pushing the door open. The room was pitch dark. Flipping the light on, I scanned the space. Empty sinks, empty floor. But the two bathroom stalls were closed. Something told me to check. Dropping to my knees, I peeked under the stalls. My breath caught in my throat. Heavy black boots. Just sitting there. No movement. No person wearing them. Then, from somewhere in the room, a laugh echoed. Low, raspy, deranged. It wasn't a child's giggle or a drunken chuckle. It was the kind of laugh you'd expect from an old, crazed man. A wave of dread hit me. My earlier confidence vanished. I shot up and bolted back to my room, slamming the door shut and locking it. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and started texting every friend I could think of. No one responded. They were all asleep. Then, one last time, the knocking started. Slow, rhythmic, mocking. I ignored it. It lasted for 30 seconds before stopping completely. The next day, I spoke to everyone on my floor. No one else had heard knocking. No one had seen anything. And every single person swore they hadn't played a prank on me. To this day, I have no idea who or what was tormenting me. But judging by the boots and that unsettling laughter, one thing is clear. Whoever it was, they weren't a student, and that thought still haunts me. The frat house was far from campus, tucked away in a rundown part of town. As we pulled up, the only sign of life was the thumping bass and the scattered cars parked along the street. From the outside, the house looked nothing like a fraternity, more like a random rental they had claimed as their own. We knocked on the door and were immediately greeted by a short, chubby guy in a sweat-stained white t-shirt, holding a red Solo cup. Without hesitation, he waved us inside. The party was a mess. The dimly lit living room was packed with at least 50 guys, the air thick with sweat and cheap beer. There were barely any girls, maybe two, and neither seemed remotely interested in being there. The heat was unbearable, and the atmosphere screamed desperation. I gave about 20 minutes, making small talk with one awkward guy after another, each conversation more lifeless than the last. The whole scene was giving off weird vibes. I signaled my roommate that we should leave, but a group of guys by the door made us hesitate. We didn't want to make an awkward exit. With nothing else to do, I kept drinking their watered-down beer, downing 5 cups before even feeling a buzz. Then, out of nowhere, a heavy-set guy approached me, grinning as he handed me a small bottle. "That'll get you shit-faced," he said with a smirk. I forced a laugh, thanked him, and expected him to move on. but he just stood there, watching, waiting. Not wanting to make things weirder, I took a sip. It burned going down, some kind of strong liquor, as I tried to move away. The guy kept pulling me into a conversation, one that felt more like an interrogation than small talk. Every time I hinted at leaving, he found a way to keep me engaged. That's when things got hazy. The room started spinning. My vision blurred. The lights seemed to dim. Then blackness. When I came to, I was lying on a bed in a pitch-black room. The muffled sound of music told me I was still in a frat house, but I had no idea how long I'd been out. My head was pounding, my limbs felt heavy, and a wave of panic set in. As my eyes adjusted to the dark, I could make out some furniture and a small closet door. Then, over the distant music, I heard a plastic bag crinkling inside the closet, as if someone had accidentally stepped on it. I didn't wait to find out who or what was in there. I bolted. Stumbling out of the room, I raced down the stairs and shoved through the crowded living room. I spotted my roommate and grabbed him, dragged him out the front door past the same group of guys still lingering near the entrance. During the drive back to campus, I told him everything. He wanted to call the cops, but I convinced him it would be pointless. Then came the question I hadn't even let myself consider. Had I been taken advantage of? I checked myself over. My clothes were still on, and I didn't feel any pain, so I assumed the worst hadn't happened. A time check showed I'd only been out for maybe 10 minutes before waking up. Whatever that guy had given me must have been a dud, or I'd just gotten lucky. That night was my first and last experience at an underground frat party, and to this day, it remains one of the scariest things I've ever been through. It was a relatively unknown spot on campus, and we liked it that way. That night, we brought a bunch of beers, lit a fire, and hung out, having what we referred to as a bro chat. As the night progressed, time seemed to pass more quickly as the alcohol took effect. Eventually, we were laughing so hard that one of my friends was rolling on the ground in the leaves. That was when my other friend suddenly stopped laughing and whispered, "Sure." We all perked up, listening closely. In the distance, we heard the crunching of leaves and snapping branches. Panicking, we threw our bottles into the lake. None of us were 21 yet, and it wasn't uncommon for campus police to patrol the woods on weekends, looking for students up to no good. We stuffed the rest of the beers into a backpack. I was moderately drunk, which only made my paranoia worse, and I could tell my friends felt the same. The fire made us an easy target for anyone passing through, but the spot was so remote that it was rare to see anyone else this deep in the woods. Yet, the footsteps continued, slow and deliberate, circling us, or at least moving in a C shape around our little campsite. It felt like we were in a horror movie, the eerie rustling of leaves and the sharp snap of twigs echoing around us. At first, we laughed it off, but soon the fear became real. Out of nowhere, a loud thud made us all jump. It took me a second to register what had happened. A tree branch had been thrown right into the center of our fire. One of my friends bolted, sprinting into the woods without a word. My other friend and I sat frozen, exchanging nervous glances, half laughing, half terrified. Then, another branch flew toward us, this time hitting my friend in the face. He let out a scream of pain. Without thinking, I grabbed the backpack, helped him up, and we took off running toward campus. We sprinted through the woods, our hearts pounding, and finally reached the road that separated the nature preserve from our dorms. We stopped, gasping for breath, until we heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching from the woods. Whoever had been out there was following us. We didn't wait to find out who or what it was. We ran straight to our dorm, slamming the door behind us. When we got back to our floor, we found our other friend already in his room, pale-faced. Curious and still shaken, we looked out the window down toward the woods. There, pacing back and forth just at the tree line, was a shadowy figure. Every time a car passed, they would step back into the darkness, as if trying to avoid being seen. Eventually, they disappeared into the woods for good. That night, we continued our drinking session in the dorm, laughing it off within minutes. But when we woke up the next morning, the true horror of what had happened hit us. None of us ever went back into the woods after dark again. It was my first year of university. I had just finished unpacking all my belongings into my dorm room, and my family had just left. Later that same day, my roommate arrived. Right from the start, I knew this guy was the most socially awkward person I had ever met. I introduced myself as Dan, extended my hand for a handshake. He paused, looked at my hand as if he didn't understand, then let out a small laugh and muttered, "Oh." He then gave me the weakest, most lifeless handshake I had ever experienced. I had to ask for his name, since he didn't even introduce himself. He was Dale. I tried to make small talk, but he only responded with yes or no answers, occasionally offering a forced laugh or awkward smile. Within minutes, we were both sitting on our beds, silently glued to our laptops. I was already regretting my roommate assignment and considered requesting a switch. Anyone would be better than Dale. At first, I thought he was just awkward, but I soon realized he was much more than that. I met some of the other students on my floor, and they seemed cool, which was a relief. That night, after exploring the campus, I returned to our dorm to find Dale in the exact same position as when I left. I greeted him with a simple, "What's up, Dale?" Unsurprisingly, he didn't answer. By 9:30, with nothing else to do, I turned off my lamp and went to bed. Sleep didn't come quickly, though, because Dale was on his laptop until 3 a.m. When he finally shut it, I quickly fell asleep, only to wake up an hour later. The blinds were now open, allowing the moonlight to illuminate the room. Dale was sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at me. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and asked, "Dale, what the hell are you doing?" He whispered, "Sorry," and lay down. The next morning, Dale was already gone when I woke up. It felt like the first time he had ever left the room. It was the first Saturday of the year, meaning orientation and campus festivities were in full swing. During orientation, as our group walked past the school gardens, I overheard a couple of students whispering, "What is that kid doing in there?" I looked over and saw Dale. He was sitting in the dirt behind a patch of bushes, rubbing the bark of a tree with his hand. The orientation leader didn't notice. Otherwise, I'm sure she would have intervened. I walked by, saying nothing, but later told the two students he was my roommate, hoping to start conversation and make friends. They apologized for me. None of us were sure if it was appropriate to laugh, but we did. I ended up befriending those two and made plans to hang out with them that night. Later, when I returned to my dorm, I learned the school had found a new roommate for me. Things were finally turning around. That night, I left to meet my new friends, and when I returned, Dale was sitting on the desk chair, facing the door. "Oh, hey, what's up?" I said. "Nothing," he responded flatly. I sat on my bed, opened my laptop, and immediately noticed something was off. My emails had been opened, emails I was certain I hadn't read yet. Several folders were also opened. Dale must have snooped through my laptop. When I confronted him, he responded, "No," loudly, and almost before I had even finished my question. His reaction alone told me everything I needed to know. I let it go, deciding I'd be out of there soon anyway. But as I searched for my pajamas, I noticed my clothes had been moved around. Something wasn't right. That night, I woke up to the sound of the zipper. I sat up and saw Dale on the floor, rummaging through my bag. This time, I turned the lamp on and confronted him directly. He played dumb, muttering, "I think you have my toothbrush by mistake." It was the most intelligent response he had given so far, but I knew he was lying. Something was seriously wrong with him, and I didn't want to escalate things. The next day, I moved into my new dorm. My new roommate wasn't exactly a social butterfly, but he was miles better than Dale. That night, after a decent conversation, we turned off the lights and went to bed. For the third night in a row, I woke up to a strange noise. It was a faint clicking sound, inconsistent but occurring every few seconds. I got up, hoping it was something harmless, a loose floorboard or even a mouse. But as I listened closely, I realized the noise was coming from the other side of the door. The nightlight in the common area was always on, so when I looked through the peephole, I could see the top of someone's head. They were looking down, and now that I was paying attention, I realized the clicking noises were coming from the doorknob. Someone was trying to unlock my door. I immediately called campus police. They arrived in under 5 minutes, and only then did I feel safe enough to open the door. They had Dale in handcuffs. I wasn't surprised. I told the officers everything, that he was my former roommate who had gone through my things, and now he was trying to break into my new dorm. They took him away, and I never saw him again. I'm not sure if he was suspended for the semester or expelled, but he was gone. I spent the rest of my university years like any other student, but every now and then I still think about the nightmarish experience I had with Dale.